Welcome, welcome. Today's episode of 40 Days to 40. We are joined by Ushi Patel. Hi, Ushi.
Hi, Vay.
Ushi, amongst many things, is a magical creative designer. She's a wonderful mama to two little guys, 4.5 and 2.5 years old. She's a wife, a sister, a great business partner, an all around badass. She is also the creative vision behind the 40 Days to 40 brand. She currently lives in the great state of Texas and was recently named by LA Style magazine in their lineup of most influential 2023 issue. She's also an alum of the 40 Days to 40 process, having completed this, I think, 4 years ago.
Yes.
So I'm so happy to have you today to speak about this. Before we get started, did I miss anything in my introduction of you?
Well, it's interesting because I'm going to be 45 in August, but so the numbers don't add up because I did the process a year after.
Well, happy almost birthday in August.
Thank
And
you.
before we dive in, I just wanted to have you like contextually share with folks what was
Yes.
life like for Ushi Patel.
Well, life was good. I think by most standards, people would be like, "Wow, she has an awesome life," and I think that that's just it. I do have an awesome life, and I think some of the questions that were coming up for me around whatever that transition is, the things that were coming up for me is, well, what do I really want to do next? Is that what I want to do? Or is that what somebody in my head wants to do? And who put that somebody in my head? Is that really me? And for me, this was particularly poignant because I had just had my first baby. And I shared with you that my father got some health news the day I started 40 Days to 40, and he has also since passed. And so it was like these kind of epic milestones alongside this birthday that I sort of let just go by without any intentionality. And at that time, we were working together on many different things, and you had talked about this process, and I thought that's something that I didn't do for myself at the actual age. And as you said, age doesn't matter. So I was like, great, could we just do it now? And it worked out. But I just remember feeling like the bigness of life, not necessarily knowing what was me being my own direction, what was influencing me from the external world or old narratives that I might have had. Definitely, I have a strong cultural background that sets certain expectations that for sure I was buying into. So that just questions. And also I just thought when after 40, you basically are dead. Honestly, that's what I thought. I was like, there's no life after 40. Like either I was going to retire by 40 and be a gazillionaire. I don't know why that's like in your head. Oh, I'm going to retire by 40, when because I'm a business degree too. So like in your MBA, they're always like, you're retire by 40 is like the big, like you've made it, which cracks me up now. Cause I still like, even at about to be 45, I think I'm like, it doesn't totally register as an age, but that's what was happening is I didn't even kind of recognize it, but on one hand and on the other hand, I was like thinking my life was over in some weird way. And it wasn't, it's not over. It was like very subtle, but I just thought, oh yeah, I'm not going to have fun anymore or something. I don't know. I have to be responsible with whatever that means, or I'm an adult now also, whatever that means. I'm middle-aged. That like has no resonance whatsoever, but that's what goes through your head at 40.
And so you had like done many of the things that were expected, right? You had the husband,
Mm-hmm.
had
Mm-hmm.
fallen in love, found a great guy, had the
Yeah.
husband,
Mm-hmm.
you had your first baby, even if it was later in life, relative to who knows what
Yeah.
standard. You
Yes.
had a business, you had, a great career success at that point, and you just were like, is this it? Or like what was
Mm-hmm.
emerging from you? What were you longing for that was saying this wasn't enough or this was not all you imagined it might be?
Well, I think that so one of the narratives is that you have to work yourself to the bone in order to be successful. So I definitely noticed an inability to savor the things that I had in my life. Kind of this feeling of like, okay, on to the next and the next accomplishment, the next credentials. Well, I have great talents. I'm obviously well educated thanks to my family and me. But I do live a life of privilege, right? And with that privilege, it's like, what am I going to do? What do I want to do? And how do I want I mean, I'm being so morbid today, but it truly was this for me. I was like, if I'm going to be on my deathbed and look back, am I going to be full of joy with what I did with my time?
Do you remember, did you have any feelings about the prospect of turning 40 or being in your 40s or being 40?
So, okay, by like society standards, I feel I did everything sort of late, right? So, it's leading up to 40. I get married. I mean, I meet my husband, I get married. We have a big fat Indian wedding. Uh, so much, right? Two deaths, three deaths in our family, in friend circle, two babies, an interstate move now. Like this last 5 years has been packed with just about every job change, everything you can, every single thing you can think of that's a major milestone came. And so I don't really think it, even if I had my blinders on, I feel like life was like, hello, hello, So, yes, in some ways, I think I was in more of a checklist, get it done vibe, more so than like an intentional vibe. Yeah. So I would say the other thing I thought was 40 was going to be boring. I thought 40 was, like I said, I was like, oh, there's no life after 40. And I will say now, like, it's so untrue because I feel more myself than I've ever felt. I feel really good in my body and I really do. I feel better than I did in my 30s and I feel, I don't like to say younger because I'm not younger. I'm 45, but I feel vibrant. And we use, in our process, my word was vitality. So that's what I feel. I feel vitality. I love my work. I love my business partners. I love my ecosystem of friends. My kids are doing well. It's not that there's not ups and downs. It's not, but that's the thing that's shifted is like they all come and I'm so much more at peace, or like I have equanimity around what comes my way because of these tools and the way I think about them and really how I'm relating to myself. So that's what really happened. And but no, I would love to tell you that I was thinking about it, but it was a gift. It was a complete gifted experience. And I couldn't have thought to do it for myself, which is why I am so passionate about like, how do we share with everyone, like, oh, it's a cool thing to do, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk a little bit about some of the steps along the way. The 40
Hmm.
days to 40 process is 40 days, and
Yes.
that's roughly 6 weeks. So I feel like when I think back to when you were doing the process, that you
Hmm.
started to have a big shift around the second week of the process, which, if you recall, is kind of like the times where we start to identify some of the unconscious beliefs that either we're
Hmm.
holding expectations about what it is to turn 40, or we're holding them because they're societal or cultural.
Hmm.
And so I just would love to hear a little bit, if you recall. There was one day, it was day 8 in your practice, I think, where I asked you to list all of the fears that you had about turning 40. And you maybe have named some of them already in this conversation, but like, what were your fears about turning 40?
Well, one was that I hadn't achieved, like I hadn't done enough really. That I hadn't gotten to where I thought I would be by 40, which is, I remember like retired at 40, like that whole vibe. What it's like, I didn't do it. And then two, that I get lost in the next years of my life and like wouldn't actually be on. I don't really love on purpose. I find people get stuck with that, but it is that, like, I'd be kind of aimless and directionless. And those are the two I remember the most. And then the other one, this is like probably got too much influence of knowing what I know now, but just doing things that the people pleasing, like doing everything because I was trying to be the good daughter or the good wife or even the good mom at that point. Even with a 1 year old, trying to be like the best mom ever, and feeling that I had to live up to other people's expectations of me. And I think this process was like just when it started to become apparent, that when I was doing it, no, it was like, oh, no, 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 no. These are other people's expectations. These aren't the things that I want for myself. There's some of what I want for myself. And again, because benefit of being on the other side of the process, like a lot of it was what I wanted for myself, but it was just kind of like in a different, just a slightly different angle that made it more me, that then brought the joy. Yeah.
Do you remember what it felt like when, and we might have had a conversation about it, when it was like, wow, those beliefs are in me, but they're not mine? Can you try and articulate what that moment was like?
When I was 5 or 6, whenever you go to like school as what you want to be when you grow up, I think it was like 6 or 5. I said to my dad, I want to be a billionaire. He's like, I don't know how to dress like I don't know how to dress you up like a billionaire. And but he said that he had asked me why, and I said because I think in this world that people listen to money. And so if I want to do good things for people and make things happen, I just had bought in at 5 that I was going to need a lot of money to do it. And no one ever really talked me out of it, actually. So just talk about, everyone's like, yeah, yeah, you're right. That's what you have to do. So it's talk about like how early on you pick up a narrative that somebody else's. And so then you question, but why? And so then I make this list of why. And you were like, aren't you already doing that? And it's like, oh yeah, I don't need the identity of a billion. Like the identity that I thought I had to have was already at play. I was making a great contribution. People do listen to me. I am able to share my thought leadership. Because all these things that I thought, I am able to travel. I am able to, I don't know. What did I even said like, oh, I could have like a chef, and you're like, you can't have a chef, and I was like, oh, I was like, I just have to prioritize a chef then. And it might not mean that I get the other stuff, but there's people who can make you food, and there's meal delivery, like there's just all these things that you were questioning in me, both in the process and live in our sessions, where you're like, but why, like why do you want that, why do you want that now? You also gave me the freedom to come back and say, yeah, I still want to be a billionaire, but it was so kind of obvious by the process that I was basically living up to an idea instead of the thing that I really wanted in my life. And then once you list what you really want, you most of the time you're like, oh, I have most of that. And if I don't, I just need to reprioritize my time and resources and attention to have it. And I get to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Do you remember any like cultural beliefs you were carrying around that you were able
All
to
of them.
like shove off result? Can you name
All of them.
some of them? Like some people watching or listening might have some of them.
Yes. Okay. So first and foremost, we've come a long way, to all my Indian sisters and brothers out there, but this idea that there's only one type of profession that equals success, doctor, engineer, lawyer, that a large part of your success is measured by your bank account and the amount in it. Um, and I even chuckle now, Juliana, because at the time I really thought that that's what everybody else's expectations were of me. But now that I've opened myself up to this process and the conversations, they're all saying the same thing. They don't want to be measured by bank. It's like this kind of unsaid narrative that's imposed on all of us. And actually, all of us don't like it, but we're all buying into it kind of thing I experienced. Nobody wants to be measured by their bank account. It's a nice thing to have. It's a great tool in the world, but it's like, no, they want to be seen for who they are. So that's one, was like profession and money defining who you are, or level of success. Oh, and then you can just like, what college did you go to? I just keep putting that in there. Marriage, kids, house, what house do you own? So see all these external factors to tell you that you're happy, or to tell you that you lived a life of meaning, or that what you're doing is worthwhile. That's a huge one in my culture. Second one, it would be, I was past this by the time I did this process, but there was still lingering effects of, because I'm in an interracial marriage. So it was like, you have to marry like in your caste, like your people. And again, only recipe for happiness. And it was like, I was living the direct opposite of that, but I hadn't acknowledged myself like, oh, look, you can have joy and feel good on both sides of the equation. There are people who can marry within, and there can be people who marry without. And no, it's really up to us what kind of marriage we want to have. So that was one that was like, And even just that, you ask me, well, what kind of, because you get married, but what about the marriage? It's like all about the Indian wedding. I'm like, that's one day, or it's in India, it's 4 days before, or a week. But and so you got me really thinking about, well, what I can even define that in my life. What kind of marriage do I want? What kind of partnership do I want? That's when I started to see, when I started to ask those questions for myself, independent of the process. I was like, oh yeah, it's working.
Yeah. And I don't know if you remember, but like I asked you to think about yourself at the end of your life, either 60 years from now or at the end of your life, whatever felt more resonant with you. And looking back to 40, being like, what would you have told your 40-year-old self to go for or to put on that list or to make sure she went after? Was there anything, do you remember as part of that process, was there anything that surprised you?
I think I put more creative pursuits. I think that that's what I did more, which is so interesting. I'm going to say it like this now, but I think I said different words, but I'm living it now. Ultimately, where I came to is like, I don't want to leave any part of me out. That's what makes this fun for me, and it makes it Ushi, is that they're all going to come to the table to get me wherever it is, whatever I was perceiving the billionaire to be at the end of my life. Like, she wants to be as she is. She wants to be all the things, the multicultural, multifaceted, multi-passionate girl she is. And not one or the other is going to contribute to that. And I think I use the word especially related to billionaire freedom. I wanted freedom. But the way to do it isn't going to be, again, working yourself to the bone. It wasn't going to be the typical way, because Wall Street, whatever I was thinking at the time were the conventional paths. It's going to be me being me. It sounds very, like, again, cliche, but it's really that. It's like when I'm all of me, when they all come to the table.
Thank you. Well, Aisha,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us. And thank you all who have
Yeah.
watched
Thank you.
and listening. It's been great to be here and hear a little bit about what she experienced and how it's still playing out in her life today. And we focus a little bit on week 2 of the process, but in our next episode, we will look at week 3, where we start to incorporate how some of the visioning pieces go into commitments and then behaviors and actions. And we'll have another guest on for that. So until then, thanks, Ushi. Thanks, everybody.